Last night in Rhyolite, Chapter 1, The Detour. It was the kind of day that felt like it might last forever. The sun was warm and honest, the kind that kissed your arms through the rolled down window and made the whole world smell like hot dust and creosote. Linda had her feet up on the dash, red toenail polish catching the light, and the playlist was bouncing between Fleetwood Mac and Bonnie Raitt, like the universe knew what we needed. We were 2 hours out from Beatty, headed for some strange desert art installation Linda had read about months ago. Rusted out mannequins, painted pianos, that sort of weird magic. Linda popped a lemon drop in her mouth and sucked on it like it was keeping her alive. God, remember when we used to do stuff like this all the time? She said, before everything had to be about someone else? I smiled and kept my hand on the wheel. Back when we had energy and no regrets. Speak for yourself, she said, eyes hidden behind her oversized sunglasses. I'm full of regrets, but I'm still fun. A minivan passed going the opposite way. A kid in the back waved out the window. Linda waved back with both hands like a pageant queen. I honked once just for the hell of it. The world felt good. Like it had opened just wide enough for the two of us. This trip was a long time coming. We'd talked about it for years, always saying, someday. Someday we'd take a real road trip. Someday we'd chase something weird and beautiful instead of chasing groceries and deadlines and husbands with emotional range of a turnip. Well, now someday was today, and today was perfect. This is what I imagined, Linda said, reaching a hand out the window to surf the wind. Big sky, endless road, not a damn soul around. Not even a gas station, I said, checking the fuel gauge just in case. Don't jinx it. We're fine. She was right though. Everything was fine. Better than fine. The desert around us was a vast canvas of silence and color. Bleached rock, low hills, patches of stubborn wildflowers trying to bloom in the gravel. Every so often, we'd see some strange roadside sculpture, a metal chair welded to a coyote skeleton, a bicycle buried front wheel first in the dirt. Are we sure this isn't the art installation already? I asked, passing a pile of glass bottles stacked like a cairn. Linda grinned. Nevada doesn't know where art ends and junk begins. That's the charm. We turned off onto the road to Rhyolite around noon. It wasn't marked well, just a cracked green sign leaning a little too far south, half covered in dust. Linda was bouncing with excitement, pointing toward where the hills peeled back and a few sun-bleached ruins stood like broken teeth. This is it, she said. This is where the ghost town starts. You and your haunted-ass hobbies, I said, but I was smiling too. We were maybe 10 minutes in when it happened. No warning, no noises, no sputter, just silence. The car jerked once and died mid-roll. I coasted us to the shoulder as Linda sat forward, suddenly alert. Wait, what was that? That was not great, I said, flicking the ignition. Nothing. Not even a whine. Dead. We looked at each other. Then we laughed. Not panicked laughter. Not yet. Just the kind that bubbles up when things go sideways and there's nothing to do but lean into it. I thought you got this thing serviced, Linda said between chuckles. I did, I said, getting out. Right before we left. Oil change, new filter. I even checked the coolant like a grown-up. Well, she said, stepping out behind me and pulling her scarf over her hair like a glamorous desert widow. Maybe it just didn't want to see the art. We waited, drank water, took some pictures. The heat was steady but not brutal, and the wind was just cool enough to feel like a kindness. Linda didn't seem bothered. She was stretched out on the bumper like it was a lounge chair. This is a sign, she said. A little adventure. The universe telling us to slow down and take the scenic route. By foot, we've got water, scarves, You're wearing sensible shoes." She was right. We weren't in trouble. Not really. Just a little delayed. Chapter 2: The House That Waited. We packed lightly: water bottles, our scarves, a power bank with no signal to use it on. I took a picture of the car's position before we left, half out of habit and half out of the low, gnawing sense that we might never see it again. The sun was lower now, but the heat still pulsed off the ground in visible waves. The road ahead shimmered like water, though we knew better. "We'll find someone," Linda said. "There's got to be a gas station or diner soon. People live out here, right?" "In theory," I said. "Or at least they die here." She gave me a look. "Okay, no more ghost stories for the rest of the trip." We walked. The road curved gently through the hills, the landscape flattening and lifting in slow waves of dry grass and stubborn sage. A pair of vultures circled far overhead. I told myself they weren't following us. Linda kept pace well at first. We even sang a few bars of some old Eurythmic song, laughing when we both botched the second verse. It still felt like an adventure. One of those things we'd retell later, with wine and smugness. But after a while, the silence grew. "Hey," Linda said, pausing. "Did you hear that?" I stopped. "What?" She tilted her head, listening. It sounded like someone called my name. I listened. Nothing. "You probably heard me singing," I said. "That's what you call singing." I laughed. She didn't. We passed an old metal sign half buried in the sand. It used to say something. Warning maybe, or restricted. Now it just leaned like a drunk, riddled with bullet holes, edges rusted into lace. Further along, the desert began to feel too still. No bugs, no birds, just us and the occasional whisper of wind that felt like breath against the back of my neck. Linda started slowing. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, but her voice was thinner now. She pressed her hand to her chest and took a long breath. "Just got a little dizzy for a second." "You need to sit?" "No, I don't. We're close to something. I saw it a few minutes ago. There's a light up ahead." Sure enough, not long after, it came into view. The light was flickering as if it was alive. An odd color, too. Seemed to change from yellow to white, then green. As we got closer, we saw what looked like a rock formation, the kind that tricks your eye into shapes. Then I blinked, and the lines sharpened. A roof, windows, a slumped porch barely visible through the haze. It was small, low, set far back from the road, half swallowed by scrub and dirt. "Think someone lives there?" I asked. Linda didn't answer right away. Then, "We're not going to find anything better before dark, and it's getting colder still." We walked toward it, feet dragging now. The sun was dipping low, shadows stretching like claws across the dust. My throat was dry, and the silence had gone from peaceful to oppressive, like the whole desert was holding its breath. As we got closer, something about the place pushed back. Not physically, but emotionally. It was the kind of house that just wanted to be left alone. "I hate this," I muttered. "Everything about this says no." Linda kept walking. "Everything about my legs says yes." We stepped onto the dirt path that led to the door. Barely there. More suggestion than trail. I glanced back at the road one last time, hoping to see a pair of headlights. Nothing. No wind, no sound, no chance of turning back. Then, just as we reached the porch, the door opened. A woman stood there. Frail, older, still as glass, hair pinned too tight. No expression, no surprise, as if she'd been waiting for us. "Evening," she said. Chapter 3: The House and the Stranger. She was just standing inside the threshold, hands folded neatly in front of her, as if she'd been watching from the window the whole time. Her voice was soft and pleasant. a strange contrast to her appearance. She looked like she belonged in another decade with her hair pinned that tight, long skirt, no hint of modernity anywhere. We were frozen for a second, startled. Then Linda cleared her throat. "Sorry to bother you, but our car broke down a few miles back. We were hoping we could borrow your phone." The woman didn't blink. "Phone doesn't work out here." Of course it didn't, Ted. "Oh," I said. "Is there a mechanic nearby? Anyone with a tow truck?" She tilted her head slightly, like we were asking questions in a language she almost remembered. "Closest place with a garage is Beatty. But that's a long walk." She stepped aside. "Come in. You can rest. I'll get you something warm." Linda and I exchanged a glance. This was the part in every horror movie where you say no, thank you, and back away slowly. But we were tired, sore, and the cold had started biting at the edges of our sweat-dried clothes. So we stepped inside. The air in the house was even cooler than outside. It wasn't right. It felt like the kind of cool that came from below, from stone cellars and places that didn't see sunlight. Everything inside was old but clean. Doilies, crocheted runners, faded floral wallpaper that peeled in the corners. A single yellow bulb hummed overhead. She didn't tell us her name, just motioned toward a small table already set for 3. Tea was steeping. "Were you expecting someone else?" I asked before I could stop myself. She gave a small smile. "Sometimes people pass through." Linda sat down first. I followed stiffly. The chair creaked under me. "I hope you don't mind the tea," the woman said, pouring. "It's elderflower, good for the nerves." Linda accepted her cup and wrapped her hands around it. She looked pale now, the color drained from her cheeks. I noticed a slight tremble in her fingers. I leaned in. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just a little lightheaded." The woman set down a plate of biscuits. "You're lucky you found this place before dark. The nights out here don't like company." I forced a smile. "Guess we timed it right then." She looked directly at me without a smile. "More than you know." After tea, she showed us to a guest room. It looked untouched since the 1950s. Twin beds, stiff floral blankets, a wooden vanity with a cracked mirror. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and something else I couldn't place. Something deeper, metallic. Linda sat heavily on the edge of one bed. "This is fine and we need the rest. It's just one night." I didn't answer right away. I was watching her rub her wrist absently, like it ached. Her skin was now pale and blotchy, and there was even a faint purple ring beneath her left eye. "You sure you're not coming down with something?" I asked. "Probably just dehydrated," she said. "It was hot today." I nodded, told myself it was true, or an allergic reaction to the elderberry. That night, we didn't talk much. The beds were too far apart, and the silence between us felt heavier than it should have. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the strange creaks and pops of the house settling. At least I hoped that's what they were. Somewhere down the hall, I heard humming, soft, rhythmic, almost musical, like a lullaby played too slowly. I sat up, heart ticking faster. It stopped, just the wind again, just nerves, I thought. I laid back down and stared into the dark until the ceiling blurred. Sleep came eventually, and with it, the dream. I was in the kitchen, the same one from earlier. Only now the lights were off and something was boiling on the stove. The room was too still. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, a whisper at my ear. "She never belonged to you." I turned and woke up. My pillow was damp. The air in the room felt thicker now. I looked across the room. Linda was sitting up in bed, back to me, motionless. I almost called her name, but something about the angle of her neck, the stiffness of her spine, made the words stick in my throat. She turned slowly, her face slack with sleep. Mags? I let out the breath I didn't realize I was holding. Yeah. I think there's something wrong with this place. I didn't answer. I just listened to the wind pressing against the glass like it wanted in. Chapter 4: The Hollow Night. Linda didn't say anything else. She just lay back down, slowly, like her bones had forgotten how to move. I watched her for a while, trying to count her breaths, but they came shallow and slow, as if she were sleeping underwater. I didn't sleep again. Not really. I drifted in and out, and every time I blinked back into consciousness, something felt different. At one point, I could have sworn the room had shifted, like the bed was 2 inches closer to the window, like the door was a little farther down the wall than it had been before. Maybe I was dreaming again. I don't know. I woke just before dawn to the sound of something moving in the hall. Not footsteps. Something softer. A dragging sound, like cloth sliding across old wood. I sat up and strained to listen. It stopped the moment I touched the floor with my bare feet. I cracked the door and looked out. No one there. No light on. Just the hallway stretched longer than I remembered, like the house had inhaled during the night. I closed the door slowly. Linda was still asleep, but something in her face had changed. Her lips were pale and her eyes fluttered behind closed lids, like she was dreaming fast and deep. I touched her arm. It was cold, damp. She didn't wake. We stayed until morning. The woman, Ethel, she finally told us, made breakfast, but I couldn't eat. The eggs were wrong. Not spoiled, just wrong. They didn't even smell like food. More like heat or rot that hadn't started yet. Linda tried a bite, then put her fork down. "I'm just not hungry," she whispered. Ethel's smile didn't change. "That's all right. You'll feel better soon." I helped Linda back to the room after breakfast. She was weaker now, legs unsteady, breath shallow. I offered to carry her to the car and try walking back to the highway, but she shook her head. "I don't think I can go," she said. "Don't say that." "I'm not dying," she added quickly. "I'm just tired." But her eyes didn't match her voice. Ethel came in later with a folded towel and a cup of broth. "She's not doing well," I said, standing. "I think she needs help. A hospital. She is much worse." "There isn't one nearby," Ethel replied gently. Her skin seemed almost gray and shiny with wet. "The nearest place is ours. She just needs rest and quiet. I can take care of her." At that moment, I almost felt like the whole house took a breath. Linda didn't respond. She was watching the ceiling, eyes wide and glassy. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. I turned back to Ethel. She wasn't like this yesterday. Ethel just smiled with what looked like way too many small teeth, then set the cup on the nightstand. "Sometimes people just let go. You shouldn't try to hold on too tightly, dear. It's not your choice, and it doesn't want you to leave." Then she slowly left. That was when I snapped. I packed our bags, stuffed what little we had into Linda's canvas tote, and shook her gently. "Get up," I whispered. "We're leaving. Now." She didn't respond at first. Then her hand gripped mine. Weak, but definite. "I can't go with you," she said. I grabbed her to pull her up, but she pulled my hand off her and said, clearly and painfully, "Go." A tear rolled down her cheek. Her eyes had closed. The house shifted and seemed quieter, not empty, but watchful, listening. I didn't see Ethel, didn't hear her. but I felt her within the walls. I looked back at Linda, and she changed. Not dead, but changed. I knew I had to leave her. I can get her some help if I ran. I got to the door fast and turned the knob and opened it fast. The desert air hit me like a shock. So dry, so bright. The sun was high. What time was it? I didn't care. It felt like freedom. I stepped out onto the porch. That's when I heard her voice. "Leaving already? That's not a good idea. It doesn't want you to go." Ethel called from somewhere inside. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I got down the steps, one shaky leg at a time, and started down the path toward the road. That's when the screams came. They didn't sound human, not at first. They were high and raw, full of rage and hunger, like something old that had just realized its need was running away. I had to say to myself out loud, "Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop." I ran, or I tried. I stumbled, but something in me refused to slow down. The sky above me felt warped, like it was rippling. The ground didn't feel steady. It was like running on top of boiling water. I didn't know how long I ran. Just that at some point, the house was gone behind me. And then, finally, came the road. I fell to the dirt and dust and cried some more for Linda. The first car passed without slowing. I jumped to my feet and screamed and waved my arms. It didn't even swerve or slow. Driver didn't even glance at me. The second car honked and veered into the other lane, like it saw something, but not me. I dropped to my knees again. Dust clung to my lips, my throat. My head slumped. It seemed I knelt there forever, sobbing. Then came the third vehicle. Slower, like it knew I would be there. It veered off the road and rolled to a stop 10 feet away. A man got out. Tall, mid-50s maybe. Had clean jeans and a windbreaker. His face was dark and kind, but no expression, and didn't say a word. He just opened the back door, looked me in the eye, and nodded, like he had expected me. I got inside without saying anything either. The man pulled onto the road and began to drive. I must have slept a little. I felt rested and at peace. But then I remembered everything. I had to go back. I had to get Linda. I told the man everything. I don't know why, but I knew he'd understand. He didn't argue and just turned around. The sun was already dipping. I must have slept for hours. Then I saw the path. There, they said, pointing to the rise where the house had been. We pulled off and walked to the edge of the low hill and path. I saw the familiar single flickering light as before on Ethel's house, as the sun was lower now, and shadows were creeping. But it wasn't the exact house anymore. It was a building. Gray concrete, smooth and solid, with 2 small windows. There was a tall, narrow radio tower rising from the back, featureless. There was the same door on the front. No steps and no porch, but a subtle, steady buzzing hum in the heavy, warm air. Still, something in its shape felt familiar. I stared at it for a long time. "It's not the same," I whispered, "but it is." The man beside me still said nothing. I looked at him. He wasn't looking at the building. He was watching me. He nodded once, like he understood. We didn't go inside. We didn't want to touch it. We just stood there until the sun dropped behind the rocks and the desert air got cold. I felt the house was watching us too. I know that we both felt the same uneasiness, the pain, the sadness. This can't be real, but it is. After some time, we turned and walked away, back to his car. quietly without looking back, and drove off under the darkening sky. But something in that concrete was smiling, and it knew our names. Thank you for listening to The Last Night in Rhyolite on the Ashen Path.